Welcome back, everyone. Matthew Evans, president of Victory Aviation. The last several months, we've been gathering data to help you decide whether you want to move forward with on-demand aviation or stick with alternate transportation means. So as you all are well aware, which is why we're having this analysis to begin with, your company has expanded quite rapidly in the last few years and is going to continue to expand, which is creating some issues in the form of time utilization. So through some detailed data collection based upon your current needs and what also your projected needs in the future, Victory Aviation, our company, suggests that you move forward with an on-demand aviation asset. This is not only going to maximize your earning potential for the company, but we also want to look into how to maximize your return on investment for whatever on-demand aviation asset you choose. When we started this investigation, one of the first things that we covered was all of the locations that we needed to be able to provide transportation to. When doing so, your company gave us a list of 21 different destinations, and from there we created this city pair analysis to be able to show how much time it would take while using on-demand aviation versus the airline solution which you were already using. Very quickly, we could see a huge difference between the hours required for on-demand aviation versus the hours of travel required for the airline aviation side. You could see that on-demand for 1 year was 167.8 hours. Of course, this is utilizing a Learjet, which is pretty quick, versus the airlines, which is 876.5 hours. So it's safe to say we can see that using on-demand aviation is a huge time saver. And the interesting concept behind this is as your company expands, it will continue to save more and more time in a linear fashion. After the first round of data collecting, we could see how much on-demand aviation could be utilized for your company. And so then we could move on to the next step, which is trying to figure out what type of asset would be most beneficial for Allenstone and aggregate. Within the aviation realm, there are so many aircraft that could be used in order to meet these needs. Some of the most important factors to look at whenever starting to compare and contrast aircraft are going to be the price, the initial purchase price of the aircraft, also the maximum range, the cruise speed, how much room in the cabin there is, also like how many seats are in the cabin, how many people can you take with you on flights, and also the cargo capacity, which is going to mean how much luggage you can take with you, and also the type of equipment and the weight of the equipment that you'll be able to take on these flights. To narrow down the search a little bit, we chose 4 aircraft, some used and also some new, which were both counterparts of each other. We settled in on the 2002 TBM 700, a 2003 Learjet 31A, the 2022 version of that TBM, which is the 930, and the 2022 Learjet 70, which is the newest version of the Learjet. And if you remember from our earlier meetings, we figured out that the majority of the trips would be focused on that 300 nautical mile leg trip distance. And so we could start to qualify our figures based upon those metrics. Something as simple as the initial purchase price varies greatly. The top graph shows the entry-level points on the 2002 TBM, the 2003 Learjet at $1,250,000 and $1,450,000 respectively. And then their newer counterparts, which jump up dramatically to around $4,200,000 and $11,300,000. Also included in our research were some other basic metrics, which had to do with the long-range cruise speed, the maximum range, available payload, and maximum payload with the maximum range. Once we started to narrow down our type of aircraft and the type of mission that was required in order to fulfill all the specifications for your company, then we could start plugging those priorities into our selection matrix tool. If you remember, the selection matrix tool is just a tool that we used in order to rank the aircraft when we compare them one against another. But instead of it just being overall points, this is actually a dynamic system which prioritizes the items that were most important to your company. After we did those interviews with you, we were able to better weight the individual categories that were most important, and this was the results that we got. Those items that were most important to Allen Stone and Aggregate were the initial setup cost, the ongoing cost, the usable payload, which also means how much equipment that you can bring with you, and the time savings that were involved with whatever aircraft it was. Of course, this is going to be based greatly upon the speed of the aircraft. Next to the magenta arrows 1, 2, and 3, those reflect the initial setup cost, the ongoing cost, and the usable payload. If you remember, one of the issues that we had is that you selected time savings for one of the most important categories, yet the time savings was only 1/3 of the value factor in this particular tool. So we had to take that into consideration as we moved forward, and we did that by creating a special tool just for Allen Stone and Aggregate, which we'll cover here in a little bit. Based upon your company's needs, you already outlined that the cost of operation was something that was a very important aspect of your overall choice in what aircraft you moved forward with. And of course, some of these have very high operating cost and some of the aircraft don't. So based upon this particular part of the metric, it could completely change which aircraft is more valuable in the long run. And I also extended it out for 5 years so you could get a better idea if you held onto this aircraft, what the reasonable costs were going to be spread out over a multi-year time period. No matter how much time and detail is put into the financial side of your operation, it is also extremely important to have a good structure basis within your new department as well. Otherwise, it's just not going to function properly. One of the points that I want to make abundantly clear to you is that setting up a strong hierarchy or chain of command, if you will, is just as important to the success of this new department as safe equipment and competent pilots. In order to be able to have the most flexibility within your aviation department, we suggest that you fly under Part 91 rules. And of course, the SOPs that you create within your department need to be at least as, if not more, restrictive than FAA regulations. Financial considerations are also extremely important. You've got filing taxes in order to be able to get as many deductions as possible so that you can recoup some of these funds. You've also got to make sure that there is appropriated funds for maintenance and other things that are going to come up along the way. And of course, all this money needs to be spent legally as well. There should be an appropriate amount of emphasis on the financial side of this operation, because failing to do so, especially failing to operate within the confines of the law, and also without appropriating enough money for certain aspects that may be unforeseen when you first start, could end up in the aircraft grounded and your entire operation will come to a halt, which means the entire company suffers. Thirdly, everyone in this new aviation department needs to have the same goal in mind as Allen Stone and Aggregate. In other words, everyone needs to have a clear vision of how they can assist the parent company in ensuring that all of your goals are completed to the best of their ability and as efficiently as possible. The better the professional relationship is between the aviation department and the management at Allen Stone and Aggregate, the more proficient everybody will be as a whole, and everybody wins. Included is a diagram of the possible operating structure for the new aviation department, starting at the top with the executive board and the COO underneath that. There would be an aviation department manager, and then each subsequent department below the aviation manager would take care of things like flight coordination, the flight staff, and the maintenance. And of course, off to the side, because we mentioned it was incredibly important to pay focus and attention, is the financial manager, which would work in tandem with the aviation department manager. Now comes the biggest topic that I wanted to hit on, which is the time-saving analysis. This is the most important part of on-demand aviation and the thing that's going to create the most change for Allen Stone and Aggregate. You've already been using the airline transportation model for a while, so you're familiar with all the pitfalls that occur with that, such as the amount of time that it takes to get to the airport, going through all the security, delays, the biggest one, not being able to control your schedule, and of course, with the pandemic and other things that are variables which you can't control, entire flights and entire schedules have been canceled There's a lot of negatives. The only positives that go along with commercial airline transportation are that you really don't have any risk, financially speaking, and that's about it. With on-demand, there are some financial risks, but there are a lot of positive aspects that come out of that, both intended and unintended consequences. As your company expands, it has more and more tasks that need to be taken care of, but still within the confines of the same amount of time allotted to complete those tasks. Therefore, we get into a situation with diminishing returns until you can change some variable within that system. That variable that you can change is on-demand aviation. Some of the benefits that on-demand aviation provides you are minimal boarding time, virtually unlimited scheduling flexibility, access to a much larger selection of airports that also saves a lot of time getting to and from job sites. You are afforded an incredible amount of privacy. There is improved comfort, especially since you have your own plane. There are fewer baggage and equipment restrictions, and an increased physical safety from the public, going back to COVID-19, the restrictions where airlines were getting shut down, and yet on-demand aviation was still able to travel. Circling back to the most important point of on-demand aviation, which is the time saved, for the COO, the employee hours that they would have to travel using on-demand aviation are 167.8 within a year. That same employee using airline transportation would be 876.5 hours, which comes out to a total savings of 708.7 hours per year. That is 88 days, 17 weeks, or 4 months of saved time throughout the year. You're literally saving a third of the year in which you can allocate that time towards other tasks. Saving time turns into new opportunities. So let's dive into a few different opportunities that you could explore in order to best utilize that saved time. Improved quality control. This one is simple. The better your product is, the happier your customers are. And the happier your customers are, the more they're going to come back to utilizing your services and products. And the more referrals they're going to provide you based upon their associates, friends, family, anybody else they can put the word out to. The less legal issues you're likely to run into as well, because your product is held to a higher standard. New clients. In order to build your company and continue building your revenue, you need new clients to be able to fund that income. With on-demand aviation, you'll be able to travel more frequently to potential clients to meet with them face-to-face. You'll also have the opportunity to entertain these new potential clients, their guests, their friends, family, associates, other investors, which also increases the likelihood that you'll be able to secure those new accounts. Improved quality of life. With not having to spend so many overnights in other cities and being able to get to and from job sites faster, that provides more time to be at home, to be with family, to be with friends, etc. For example, the COO would be able to sleep in their own bed an additional 51 nights a year by utilizing on-demand versus an airline. The COO is not the only person that would benefit from this. You, the executive staff, would benefit from this as well on your travels. And of course, any kind of quality control teams and emergency strike teams would benefit from this as well. Higher employee retention. With this on-demand travel and the higher flexibility, you, the executive staff and COO, would have a much greater chance of going out and meeting with employees on job sites in person. The number one reason that employees leave companies is because they don't feel appreciated. And by you being able to go out and meet with employees in person to resolve issues or just show that you genuinely care will absolutely raise the morale of these employees out in the field. I really want to drive home that the most valuable asset that any company has are the employees. If you lose them, then eventually you're going to lose your entire company. As a small reminder about how important it is for you and your employees to be well rested, I've gathered a few tidbits of information. Currently, US workers are getting 1.5 hours less sleep each night relative to how much they slept 2 decades ago. So that's less than 7 hours a night, and at least 1/3 of workers are chronically sleep deprived. Research also finds that sleep deprivation can impair cognitive skills, including creative thinking and the ability to problem solve. And ensuring quality rest among employees can be obtained through this on-demand aviation by offering more flexible schedules, maximizing time at home, which we talked about above, and lowering overall stress by skipping lines and delays in the airport. I'm not sure I've met anybody who looks forward to going through security, but you don't have to worry about that if you have an on-demand aviation solution. The method used for quantifying your return on investment is truly the meat and potatoes of this entire analysis. What really matters in the end is how much money is spent on this new aviation department compared to how much profit is going to be gained in the future based upon this time savings. The cost per hour saved tool is the custom tool that Victory Aviation came up for Allen Stone and Aggregate. The tool takes into consideration the initial purchase price of the aircraft, and then the annual costs, and then aggregates it over a 5-year period, comparing it to the total amount of time saved per aircraft. The results are that even though the 2003 Learjet is not the cheapest cost per workday saved, it does give you an additional 6 days per year versus the next least expensive option. Over a 5-year period, that adds up to a total of 6 weeks more of saved time, and this is definitely significant. So based upon all the input from your aviation acquisition committee and all the research we've done for the last few months, I think it comes as no surprise, but we do suggest the used Learjet 31A as the best option to move forward with your new on-demand aviation department. The used Learjet flies just as fast as the brand new counterpart, but at a fraction of the cost. And when I say a fraction of the cost, I mean 13% of how much it would cost for the brand new Learjet. This means you'll be able to start out on-demand aviation with nearly peak performance, but with very little financial responsibility from the beginning. This is the best return on investment that we could hope for. The great news about on-demand aviation is should you still choose to go with a less expensive option, such as the used TBM, you're still going to save a ton of time compared to the airline aviation option. And with the used TBM, it's 25% cheaper than the Learjet, but you're only losing 7% efficiency. In conclusion, Victory Aviation has really enjoyed this process of analyzing and figuring out your needs over the last few months. We hope that we've definitively shown how important an on-demand aviation asset can be for your company, and we look forward to setting up your new aviation department in the future and getting it operational. You're still going to shoot. The great news is that level of financial the used Learjet flies just as fast as the brand new counterpart to almost over a 5-year pot. Stop saying particular. Stop saying in particular. Mother. I know what I want to say. I just need to be articulate. Amount. So close. The used TBM will still